So, good evening, welcome to everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on site or online. And tonight we will participate together to a discussion about CIDOC CRM, about FRBR LRMoo models and their use. I said together because, of course, we will propose one at a time a few questions, a few discussion topics to our two speakers, but during each topic, you will have the possibility to contribute to the discussion by raising your hand if you are here on site, or adding comments in the chat box if you attend online. So please do not hesitate to raise your hand during the discussion.
I don't think they're hearing us. I can see Pat
Frowning
and shaking her head.
But probably the sound is unmuted.
Hi, Pat.
I see nothing, I hear nothing. All three monkeys in one.
Yes.
Is the mic turned on?
Yes?
Okay.
Do you hear us?
Can you see it? Yeah.
And slide dry. Maya says that was almost audible. Almost.
Almost.
Yeah.
Do we have to talk really loudly, Maya? No,
not
perhaps
like
not.
Try.
Does this work? Do you hear us if we're talking into this thing? They don't.
She heard us?
No, but Maya is saying no.
I'm just going to keep on speaking. Oh, no, but the no etiquette sign says no. Oh, now yes.
We hear.
There's a huge delay.
Yeah.
So seems like it.
Okay, thank you. Now try. Can you hear? You hear? Okay. So we will use that micro. I restart the welcoming speech. So welcome to everyone and also to each of you. So it will be a participatory conference. It means that we will ask several questions, a few questions to our two speakers, and the public is supposed at any moment to interact, to ask questions in the chat box, and these questions will be transferred and will be announced to us by Erin. So please do not hesitate to participate. So now, before we start, I will let me introduce you our two speakers. First of all, Mélanie Roche, who is curator at Bibliothèque Nationale de France. She is also chair of Bibliographic Conceptual Models, BCM, review group of International Association of Librarians. In front of me, Stead, who is archaeologist and one of the most famous pillars of CIDOC CRM special interest group, and he's trainer for CIDOC CRM new users and experimented users, and mentor for CIDOC CRM SIG newcomers. Besides Stephen and Melanie, the discussion will be conducted by Erin who is here, and Erin is ontology system analyst at LINX, a project conducted at Guelph University in Canada. And Erin will be our discussion leader for tonight. And we will also be helped by Emily, who is there,
And Eleni is part of ICS 4th team at Archaeological, where she is, besides a lot of other things, facilitator for CIDOC CRM works, and Eleni will be our moderator of the chat box for tonight. So guys, the floor is yours.
Should we pass the mic between us,
Right.
perhaps? Okay.
See whether they can hear us.
If we leave the microphone on the table, can you hear us all right? Yeah?
1,
Awesome.
2, 3.
Okay.
Still here? Yeah.
We'll try it like this then. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I guess we'll start off with an easy one, an introduction. CIDOC CRM, FRBROO, LRMoo. This is a lot of letters, a lot of acronyms. Can you tell us what they mean?
No, I don't. Okay, so CRM is a conceptual reference model which was housed in the International Documentation Committee, which is CIDOC, of the International Council of Museums, which is ICOM. So CIDOC is an international committee, so there are national committees within ICOM, and then international committees which deal with particular topics. And the CIDOC seemed like a natural home for the development effort of an ontological model. And in fact, the model grew out of a relational model which was built within CIDOC in the 80s and 90s, early 90s. So in the mid-90s, it became apparent that big relational data models were ineffective in allowing us to aggregate information across multiple sources. And so in 95, an experiment was done at the Germanische National Museum to use an object-oriented methodology. And then by 97, that had been adopted as the approach that would be used within the reference modeling group within CIDOC. And then from that grew the special interest group, which was founded in 2000 after the development work of the early model had reached a point where we realized we needed more people to concentrate on it, not deal with the other things that the documentation standards working group needed to tackle as well. So we split this off into its own little pocket. And we started the SIG on the basis of that and some work which was done in a small village in Crete called Agios Pavlos, where we did a set of extensions to the existing standard, and that was the basis for what we were going to then take to ISO. And that was the foundation of the SIG, was to help us manage that process of taking it through to ISO 21127. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think definition, history, all together. And you want to?
And as for FRBROO and LRMoo, the acronyms stand for Functional Requirements for Bibliographic Records in Object-Oriented Methodology and Library Reference Model in Object-Oriented Methodology. And I think most of you know this already, but for those who don't, it is important to note that these two models are not in concurrence or with each other. We are currently in the process of transitioning from one, FRBROO, which was the firstborn of the two, and to LRMoo, because, and here again, like Steve, I will need to take a step back. It all started in the end of the 90s, 1998. The IFLA, which is the standardizing body for libraries, came up with a conceptual model, which was entity relation based model, and it was FRBR. It was the first conceptual models that librarians had ever had, and its aim was purely, well, mostly economical. Its main objective was to rationalize cataloging by identifying which which information was needed and necessary in a library catalogue so as to service best users. So this was our first conceptual model, but by that time, the museum community came up with this other methodology, modeling in object-oriented methodology. So, you know, rather than erasing everything and doing everything all over again, we thought it would be best to adapt and to express the same things that FRBR, ER, entity relationship, expressed, but with the object-oriented methodology, which gave it a nice touch, a nice addition because of its focus on events. So that was the methodology from now on. So that's why and when we adopted FRBR in 2003, and the rest is history. But I think we'll come to this. So it's a long way from transitioning to FRBR 00 to LRM 00, and I'll explain later why and how, and the stakes, what's at stake today for these models.
Great. So just a reminder, at any point, feel free to raise your hands. We're just going to go, I think, to the next question and discussion, but feel free, please do bring your questions to our speakers as well. So maybe I'll start with you for this next one. What can conceptual models like FRBR, LRM, and their object-oriented versions bring to the work of librarians?
Well, for the object-oriented FRBR and LRM, what it brings is really the power of integration. I mean, the integration of data, because this is how libraries really can interconnect their data, and they have a lot of those with other communities, such as the museum community, but others as well. It also gives us a framework within which to consider our own, not only our own work as librarians, as curators of cultural heritage, but it also gives us a very clear-cut definition of what the creation process is. Literary creation, of course, comes to mind, but not only, because the strength of the model is that it works just as well for the literary production, but also for any kind of artistic, intellectual creation. And that was very new when FRBR and FRBR 00 came up. That was the first time that librarians actually took a step aside from their own mission in life to really ask the question of how do we model the creation, the process of artistic creation, and how do we model it so that it answers the questions that our users ask to a catalog. And that was the main strength that these models brought, whether entity relationship based or object oriented based. They really brought this common framework of detailing something that seemed so familiar that actually no one had ever given it a thought before, and using it to the best to give the best service to users. And that is really its main strength still today.
Wonderful. Is this similar to what you see as some of the uses and advantages of CIDOC CRM for cultural heritage institutions?
I think the real thing for documentation systems in general in in the museum community and wider cultural heritage community is the desire to facilitate users gaining access to the context for the cultural heritage that they're interested in. And context means that you need to know more than, here's a piece of glass. You need to know why that piece of glass has some history attached to it, a set of events which have generated a storyline which makes that piece of glass interesting. And I often use the example of a piece of window glass that's in the Museum of London. And it's a very uninteresting piece of glass. It's about 3 centimetres thick. It has no incredibly excitingness about its chemical composition. It's pretty bog standard silicon oxide. It was made in a very standard process of pouring molten glass onto a bed of mercury, so you get a nice flat surface to make a shop window. However, this particular piece of glass is from a shop window which was smashed by a suffragette as part of the fight for women's suffrage, for women to have the vote in the UK. So it has an incredibly powerful story attached to this piece of glass, which you can't get by looking at the piece of glass. So what the documentation that we create does is it gives us that context. When we couple that with the stuff that we get from the FRBR family of standards, is we now can understand the intellectual creation processes that sit alongside the physical creation processes of the artifacts. And we can see the weave of those things together so that we can start to tell the stories not only about the objects that we have in our care, but in the thought processes that went into the preparation and creation of those objects. And this gives us an immensely more powerful way of talking about the linkage across the different domains within cultural heritage. And we see similar things coming up when we start to communicate with archives. We start to get at the understanding of how you document process. Archivists are interested, it always seems like they're interested in piles of papers, but actually they're just there to illustrate the processes that have happened within the organisations or by the individuals whose archives they're curating. And so now we can start to blend together the storyline of creation, of process, and of context, and tell these richer stories which are orthogonal to the directions that each of our sub-disciplines record our information. So we get to tell bigger stories.
So you touched a little bit actually on the next question that I have for you here, which is about these two models together. Are these things that can be used in combination? And if so, do you want to talk a little bit about that? This question can be whoever wants to talk about that.
Yeah, well, very much so. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting at the same table today anyway. So very much so. The endeavors of making the two models work together has been the endeavor of ever since the whole adventure started back in the late 90s. I'm very sorry. The illustration of this came up a few years ago with a project that was led in France by several musical institutions, which was called LRMoo, and which exploited both the power of the expressivity of FRBR at the time to really express the process of musical creation, and of course the strength of the CIDOC CRM as a foundation. So of course I think the two models work together, and we also have an instance of that because when working into transitioning from FRBR to LRM, we realized that some of the classes and properties defined in FRBR were actually redundant with some of the classes and properties in CIDOC CRM. So we thought, rather than duplicating what already existed in the model, to which FRBR is an official extension anyway, we might as well just get down to the chase. And if a class or a property exactly duplicates a class or property in the CIDOC CRM base, what we call the core model, there was no use duplicating it and making it our own class or property in the new LRM, in the new version of the model. So even as time passes, the connection between the two is even greater, I think, and that gives for even better results, because there's no way, saying that a person is a person if it's already been stated in the model, in the mother model, so to speak. So yeah, and not only can they work together, but I think that they are bound to work ever closely together as time goes on.
Yes, I agree. And we've had some very interesting, quite large-scale projects using a combination of CIDOC CRM and recording practice within the library community, and thus FRBR as it was then, looking at things like the Research Library Group's materials project, which is, I think, 1,460 research libraries combining their special collections data every night to produce a globally searchable catalogue, which is updated with all the changes that are created in each of the contributing institutions every night. So you get a yesterday's version of everybody's data every day, which is an amazing achievement, and was only achievable by using a standard like the CRM and FRBR in combination, so that you could carry the meaning in a way that scaled linearly. So when you added the 1,461st institution, it's the same amount of work as it was adding the first institution. So it scales in a linear rate, instead of having to do 1,460 crosswalks, and then the next one is 1,461. So it gradually gets worse as time goes on. And this is one of the great powers of using these combinations of models, is that we can express the data holdings of many different types of institutions and combine them while still keeping it as a linear scaling problem, as opposed to something which goes off the scales very quickly. We look at the number of museums in somewhere like Switzerland, where there are 6,000 museums in Switzerland and probably 5,000 libraries. Try and combine the data sets across those in one country, and you've reached a problem which is intractable. Try and do it across wider groupings, and you've got something which is totally unmanageable. So the power of the standard is the ability to combine these data sets, often in dynamic ways, without us having to produce massive crosswalking. Everybody maps to everybody else. It's completely untenable, and the data is still understandable and usable as we move it from one domain to another.
Maybe one question to the colleague from the National Library. At BNF, you surely use other data formats to model data. When would you choose CIDOC CRM for a given project? Is it special collection related? You have a special object where you really want to model very precisely, or is it general use of CIDOC CRM in the whole BNF?
So I'm just going to repeat that for our online attendees as well. The question was about deciding when to use FRBR or the CRM models in the data that you work with.
It's a good question, because given the constraints within which we work at the National Library of France, we cannot use the model as per se in itself. We have to combine it with our own production formats, our own, different treatments of documents, according to which collections you are talking to. So, of course, we have to take into account a certain set of constraints, but when the projects would prove particularly powerful is precisely like you suggested, for very specific projects dealing with special collections or a special approach to collections. So we wouldn't, or more accurately, we are not currently, adopting CIDOC CRM or LRMoo model across all our data, even though we are adopting the entity relationship model, but we are quite satisfied with doing this for the moment. But it proves really, really powerful to use object-oriented modeling for specific projects such as LRMoo, which I mentioned earlier, which consisted into integrating musical data sets from not only the National Library of France, but also musical institutions, the Philharmonie of Paris and the City of the Music, which is another institution in France. And to integrate these data, we had to find a high-level conceptual model that would help us map the specificities of our different production formats to one single reference, and there was nothing more powerful for that than FRBR and its extension into LRMoo's data conceptual model for music. So for very specific oriented projects, for very special collections, or for adopting a new angle, a new approach to library collections, and beyond, not only libraries, but across institution projects. It is immensely powerful. It is there that it proves really useful to have this object-oriented model which focuses on the event to really give a new approach to data, regardless of the production format that you use, regardless of the treatment, how you physically treat collections. So that's when it is most precious from past experience.
Hi.
Really?
I don't know if I'll be...
He wants a micro.
I don't really want the microphone. I just want to exclude the world from my wisdom or whatever I'm about to say. I shouldn't be too near the mic to establish that. So just another scenario. At the Getty, which I collaborate with, they do adopt it sort of horizontally across their systems, and in that case, what they're trying to do right now is to say, well, look, we have specialized systems for collections management and archive management and library management, etc., and we're going to stick with those systems. You know, the curators are happy with this, the archivists are happy with that, but as a strategy for development and for supporting how researchers and the public eventually are going to deal with this data, they don't want to develop, the special API for TMS and the special API for archive space, then figure out how to match those things all up. So they make a stream that goes to CIDOC, CRM, etc., which they then know exactly the shape it's going to be in, regardless of what original system it was in. So then they can develop around that. And so that's like as a first stage. And then I think the sort of vision is that then those are like provided as services across other things. So you can say, well, people want to reference our collections material. Now we've got the stable URIs, et cetera, that are fed out of TMS, but eventually given as open data through CIDOC CRM. And then it can start being used in a wider network of scholarship, et cetera, but step by step, because it's all difficult.
Great, thank you. Anything that either of you wanted to add?
It is the integration of data across institution. It's the cross-institutional boundaries, which is where the CRM and LRM excel, in that they allow you to move data out of the silo where it was created, that is being created to fulfill the mission of a particular institution. And quite rightly, the institution should concentrate on collecting and maintaining and curating the data sets that support them in doing whatever it is that they want to do and need to do. But when you want to start asking questions which cross those boundaries, then you need some way to allow people to access it. And that's the great strength of this, is that instead of them having to learn 100 different institutions' way of doing things, they need to learn one. So it makes scholarly inquiry scalable. Now, it's not going to take me my entire life to query 50 institutions, different data sets, because I've got to spend 6 or 8 months learning how they've catalogued it, what the rules are, how the data structures work, what are the peculiarities and the individualities to support their mission. I don't have to learn that for 50 different institutions. I just need to learn how to query the CRM, and they concentrate on how to translate their data into that. So it becomes a mission that can be controlled and given. Each institution can give enough effort to do the intellectual lifting of getting their data into a place where anybody can consume it. And that's scalable. As a scholar, it's unscalable. If you want to hit 1,000 institutions, that's your entire career. 1,500 institutions have the collections in that you want to query. Well, you're going to have to be reincarnated.
So both of these models being in the object-oriented methodology, they have a large number of classes and then an even larger number of properties that connect these in order to represent the concepts that we work with and then connect across institutions and data sets. Do you have any particular classes that you think of as being the most important or the most useful, or just your favorites for any reasons?
We are not supposed to have favorites.
We love all our children equally.
Well, I have a particular favourite from the museum sector, which is the current permanent location, where the object may never have been. It's the place where you go and go, it's not there. Does our documentation support me finding where it actually is? So it's the support function. And I just think that's such a beautiful concept that it's my favourite.
I'm going to be way less funny than Steve, but it's a habit. So the most fundamental and important classes of FRBR LRM are actually the same as the fundamental entities in LRM. The entity relationship model that is at the foundation of LRMoo. And these entities are called the WEMI stack, and this is when you really get to appreciate the level of expressivity of the model and how it captures the process of creation. So I think here again, most of you may be familiar with those, but for the very few that may not know them, I think it is worthwhile to get into the detail of them. They are so 4 entities or classes. Sorry, work, expression, manifestation, and item, which are acronymed into WEMI, the WEMI stack. So if we start from the item, we usually start from the work, but I prefer starting from the item because it's not that it's my favorite, but it's one of my pet classes, but not and it's also the most maybe concrete entity, the most relatable for someone who is outside the library work. So, for instance, I have in my home, I have a copy of a novel, which is called The 30-Year-Old Woman by the French author Honoré de Balzac. And it's a really pitiful book because once I made the mistake of leaving it on the couch while my domestic rats were roaming the room, and I have 5 of them, mind you, so it can be quite powerful. So my mistake, of course, but by the end of the roaming period of my rats, I discovered the book, and it was all torn out. It was torn apart. They really did a good job at having a bit of it. The cover is gone. The pages are all, are all gnawed at with the little teeth marks and everything. So it's you can read it, you can read it, but it's a really pitiful looking book, and that's actually what an item is. It's that one copy that has significance for you, for your institution, for your users, depending on the level that you're looking at things. It's that one copy that is so unique because, 5 rats had a go at it during their roaming period. So, of course, it is unique. That I do not think that there is another copy that had the same history as this copy. It is also, of course, what makes it so precious. Because, if I had to save one thing from a fire in my house now, this would be maybe this, this book, because now my 5 rats have died. So it's one of the only living memory that I have of them. So, it's that one copy that has meaning. It's an item. And despite its terrible history, this item is still representative of an editorial product, of a mass-produced product, and that's the manifestation, the carrier that it represents. And the manifestation is this concept of a product that has been more or less mass-produced, which bears, this a significant number of characteristics that are the same for all copies. For instance, for my item of the 30-Year-Old Woman from Balzac, there are still the same number of pages that it's supposed to have because it's still intact, more or less. You can see that the publisher is Gallimard in the series, folios, number, etc., etc. So it's an exemplar of a manifestation of a project, and that's the manifestation, that the carrier on which stuff you can have access to stuff. And this stuff, this content that you have on this career, that's the level of the expression. That's the level of how what content has been put into this career. So the content can be, for a literary text, can be a language, certain language. Here it's a text. It's a readable text in French. I don't have to put my earplugs to listen to it. It's readily available, etc. So it's one specific content, one specific language into which the letters have been arranged that give it the level of the expression. And beyond that, well, the number of expressions, of possible expressions of this same content actually realize the level of what we call the work, which is the most abstract class from the model. So we seamlessly went from the most concrete class with the item to more and more abstraction, and that's what also I like most about the model. It allows you to depart from something very concrete, very material, to go into a level of abstraction that is really, really powerful. And so that the level of the work, the 30-year-old woman, written at a certain point in the 19th century by Honoré de Balzac, that's actually what the class, the level that allows you to link all those expressions into one single thing. And to, by this way, so not only is it very neat, intellectually speaking, but that's also what gives the best results for the user, because all these different levels that we as librarians tend to mix into one single bibliographic record, they are now very, very well defined. And what's more, they are all queryable. They can be searched. They can be answered to by a catalog, and that's very powerful. So these classes, with their fundamental relationships between them, an item exemplifies a manifestation that embodies an expression that realizes a work, is, I think, the very core of the model. And if you had to remember only one thing from this model, it would be this WEMI stack and the way that they are articulated into, well, one with each other, and how by separating the idea of content and carrier, they give an expressivity and the service to users that was never possible before. Sorry, I was a bit longer than you.
That's a wonderful answer.
Right. I can relax.
So this was great to hear as well about sort of this very core central concept for your model, both in the WEMI structure and, you know, those divisions between the conceptual aspects and their physical realizations. Is there anything sort of similar from the CIDOC CRM, either in core structure or this idea of division that you might want to talk about?
Yeah, okay. There's two concepts, the perdurant and the endurant. Mm-hmm. So the idea of things that happen only in time and things which are cross time. So an endurant is something that continues its existence, its identity through time, whereas a perdurant is a period of something happening, which is quite fundamental. And then within the endurance, within the things, the stuff, as we used to call it, but now we call it things, we have the material and the immaterial. And I always think of them as the material is things I can smash windows with, and immaterial is the things that I smash minds with. Unless you, of course, have put the immaterial on a material thing, and then you can throw that through a window, and that's fine. The material and the immaterial differ in another important way, apart from their ability to be ballistic, is that you can't destroy immaterial things. You can lose them, you can lose all the carriers of them, but you can't destroy them, you can only forget them. Whereas material things you can destroy. And that is rather unusual in the way that we define destruction. It's not the complete evaporation of the matter into energy, but actually the removal of it from a level where we wish to document it. So if I take a bronze statue and melt it down, or a stone statue and smash it into pieces, or a wooden object and chop it into firewood, I lose interest in it before I lose the matter. It becomes no longer of interest to me to document. So the material things have a threshold below which we no longer are interested in them, whereas immaterial things, we can never lose them. And I find that to be quite an elegant breakdown, in the same way as we have the difference between item and the rest of the WEMI stack. Is that difference between the material and the immaterial, and the consequences of that in the way we want to record, that are quite prevalent. And of course, the CRM is known as an event-centric model. It's driven by things happening and the physical stuff and the immaterial stuff happens to be present at it. So we tie together tables with the events that happen to them. They're designing, the designing of them, the construction of them, the use of them, their eventual destruction. Those are the sequence of things that we can tie together with events so that we can tell the history of this particular object. So the making of the window glass, its setting in the window, somebody lobbing a rock at it as a protest. Those are the things that we can track as events. And so that the blend between things happening and the stuff that they happen to gives us an enormous power to describe the cultural heritage that we're interested in. And that's exactly what's happening in the WEMI stack, is it? We're describing intellectual creation processes and their gradual realization to the point where we have a physical object which carries that idea that we can then utilize. And if you've ever read Fahrenheit 451, is it? Yeah. So the idea that somebody becomes a book by learning it so that they can quote it, and that's how the book survives. So we no longer have any physical carriers. We no longer have any physical books, no items in the WEMI stack, but we have a new carrier, the human mind, which knows the text. And that means that they're the carrier of that idea now. So all the poetry that you learned, you become a carrier. You are infected.
Yes.
Yeah, and, if I may, thank you, Mélanie. This is these 4 classes are really the most important, I think, in the FRBR. Of course, this is the core. Oh, yes, thank you, Muriel. Okay, and so in our field in history, we are in research in history. We are using FRBR. Yes, for describing our sources, and this is very important because in sources, we have items in the manuscript, but we can have, of course, all the concepts you have described, and we are using two for example, project in I don't know, history of ideas to know how an idea could have been. I don't know, the different level of an idea between, I don't know, the different centuries from the works, original works to the items, or how they, in certain kind of intellectual network, how the ideas are circulating. And so we are attempting to use FRBR to describe a broader field than only bibliographical records, and we are attempting to use it for intellectual or artistic field. Of course, for example, as in architecture, to from I don't know, the idea of a bridge to the built bridge. And there we can find all the steps from work, expression, manifestation to item. So what is your opinion about this? Could we use FRBR to such a field like architecture or artistic sculpture and so on?
I think that the best answer is, well, first of all, I do not consider myself to be the police of the FRBR. So I would, I would be in a very difficult position to say, no, you shouldn't, or yeah, you should. So to my knowledge, it has not been done before. But and also, I do know that within the CIDOC CRM family, there are extensions that specialize in architecture and the likes. So you would have to be very careful in how you connect to all these other extensions, which potentially may be able to give you a better service or to a better usage, because they're specifically made for this. But I'm not so familiar with them as to be of any kind of practical advice on it. But you would have to be very careful in managing your your connection with these. But of course you can feel free to consider that everything is a work, and that has been, if I use a very deep shortcut, that has been exemplified in an item. Then there's nothing preventing you from doing that. And also the question that you have to keep in mind is the service that you're giving to your community, to your users. What if you're using FRBR to do this? Why are you doing it? What are you doing it for? For whom are you doing it? What are their needs? The needs of the users. What are their queries? And what queries will your set of classes and properties answer to? And I think once you've said this very clearly in your mind, you can use any conceptual model you want and go along with it. But I don't know, Steve, if you have a different or another opinion.
Well, I happen to know that there's somebody who's an expert in architecture and the evolution of architectural plans in the audience. So I'm going to try and avoid talking about architecture too much. There's any intellectual creation process, whether artistic or architectural, comes at the level of work. You think of something, whether it's your schema, your data model, your building, or your poem, or your sculpture, and from that intellectual creation, which is internal in the mind of the creator, you express it in some way into something which can be shared. And it's at that point that we start to see things that we can document within the cultural heritage community. Now, that externalization gives you the possibility that it will be externalized as your idea evolves. So the work then becomes the unifying trait, which allows you to say, oh, okay, yeah, well, I started out designing this bridge this way, and then I built it, and then I changed my ideas, and then I decided that it would be better with a different material. And the same process that an artist follows. They start with an idea of how it's going to be roughed out, and then they add layers to it and add meaning to their image or sculpture. And that process of re-expressing we have to have something which allows us to tie those different expressions together so that we can talk about them as being a whole. And that's essentially what the work provides us with in the WMI stack, is this ability to say, there's stuff, all of these different things, they're all part of the same idea, expressed in different ways. And then we can look at manifestations, which are the way that we're going to produce that expression into something that can be consumed in general. And that's very common in the publishing scheme, but less common in things like architecture, where we don't see that manifestation, that repeatability of production that we do in publishing books or creating 100 copies of an illustrated manuscript, even if it's done by hand. And then we end up with the items. So there's a slightly different stack or sequence of intellectual content and manifestations that we can then document in different disciplines and different approaches to creation. However, the stack that we have from FRBR and LRM gives us enough of a stack for us to be able to deal with everything that we've found so far. So it has enough nuances in it to be able to say, well, we don't need that for this one, but we do need it for this one. So we can mix and match blend to produce the same intellectual level within these different data that we can then combine. And I think that gives us the power that you're looking for when you're starting to study those things. And from my understanding of architectural materials, you don't need to end up with an actual item. Many architectural competitions, for instance, will have 5 or 6 entries, only one of which wins, and that might not get built anyway. So we have the ability to say, well, this is a group of things which are meeting a particular design competition, and we have 6 different ways of meeting that, and then we can blend down, and maybe we end up with a building at the end of it, or a bridge, or an underpass, or a cesspit, whatever. I'm an archaeologist, it always comes down to cesspit. Or maybe we don't, but we can track all of those different levels and use our documentation to be able to tell stories about families of works, families of expressions, so that we can start to tell stories beyond a particular building being built, but look at things like schools of architecture, schools of design, schools of art. And those are the powerful storylines that we want to tell orthogonally to the way we record. Now, it's all very well going into a museum and recording all 500 red pots that they have. Okay, great. The problem with collections management systems is all you can ask for is how many red pots have we got? What I want to do is say, well, which are the red pots which have design elements on them, which are made by artists who have met another artist in the previous 3 years who had also used a similar design or been exposed to a design element that's similar in China. Right. Now we can start to track intellectual propagation. And that's the stuff that's powerful. That's the storylines that we really want to be able to tell, and which at the moment take an individual their life to tell. What we want to be able to ask those questions more broadly and more easily. It's about creating biros for people to do research with. You know, it's the CRM and LRM are a tool for us to be able to tell richer stories more quickly, and that's the power.
So now that we started talking a little bit about the use of these models by projects or researchers, maybe it's a good time to ask where can we find them? So if you want to use a model, where can you go to consult it? What forums do they exist? How can people take them on for their own work?
Well, there's the website, the CIDOC CRM website, in which you can find both the core CRM base model and all its extensions, among which FRBR, OO, and soon to be LRM. Since this is a joint venture between IFLA and CIDOC and the CIDOC CRM SIG, for FRBR, OO, you can also find it on the IFLA website, and you can also find it on the IFLA namespace. So that if you want to have a look at all the the properties and classes expressed and downloadable in semantic web formats. So these would be the main sources of vision, I suppose.
Mm. Mm-hmm. I mean, the ground truth is bizarrely a Word document for each of these standards, and the Word document is internally heavily structured so that we can use the XML version of the Word document to decompress the components and use them to generate automatically a range of serializations and tool-friendly approximations to the standard that allow you to use it in a variety of ways. So we have a pipeline that takes the document and produces, what have we got, Turtle, RDFS, and JSON LD, I think we're now producing. And because we've actually essentially reduced the standard to a structure which can then be repurposed, when new serializations come along, we will be able to create a tool chain that drops them back out into whatever it is that becomes the flavor of the month next year. So we're not tied to a particular tool stack to represent it. The intellectual content, the ontology itself, can be represented in many different ways. And we've seen implementations in Oracle, Oracle OO, lots of RDFS, some XML things, you know, all sorts of different ways of implementing it. Whatever's fit for your particular purpose, you pick a tool set that's appropriate for your mission and your resources and expertise and what you want to achieve. And then consume appropriate versions, serializations of the standard that will enable you to use that tool to deliver your mission. So if you find that there's some desperately new, exciting way of doing it that we don't produce at the moment, then you can have, oh, there's OWL as well, sorry, OWL 1. Apparently we're going to do OWL 2 as well now. Tweet twoo. So there are lots of different ways that we can render this standard in order to make it tractable for different tool stacks. It's great.
Mm-hmm. It is. And so I guess in addition to technical languages, how about spoken languages? So right. What translations exist for these models?
You shouldn't ask an Englishman about translations. Because we only have one language, and we just shout it more if we need to speak to somebody who doesn't speak it. There is French, German, Chinese, Portuguese, running out, Spanish, I think. Greek. Yeah. So, and over the last 18 months, a whole new level of translation support services have been put in place to make the translation more accessible to new people who want to translate it into new languages, but also to make all of the translations and all of the versions of the standard available. So now you can click through to any version that's been published of the standard and see the last version of translation that goes with it. It's an immensely powerful resource for tracking the content of the standard and its evolution. It's all there online. You don't have to go and find an old Word document stuffed on a USB stick down the back of the sofa anymore. It's there on the website. Pick up a particular concept within it, a class, and you can track it through, see its complete evolution and all of the translations that have ever existed of it in any language where there is a translation. Mm-hmm. Actually, there's Russian as well. Yeah, certainly Russian of the property and class names.
Russian from...
and Iranian, yes, it's a new one. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Russian for version 4, I think.
Right. So, yeah, it's, if you want to translate it, bring it on. We'll give you a place to put your translation and translate it into anything.
Well, this principle applies to extensions of the CIDOC CRM, so it also applies to FRBR OO. There exists a French translation of FRBR OO, but it's, of course, it's attached to an older version. And, well, of course, when LRMoo comes into existence, we'll be happy to engage in the same kind of streamlined process for translations that is being put in place by the CIDOC CRM SIG. It would be a nice, a nice proof of concept that this process works well.
Oh, Italian.
And Italian. Keep on thinking of them.
Yeah. Wow. It's basically cataloguing all the people who've been foolish enough to stick their heads above the parapet. And then there's Pressa, which is the the extension for serial works within the library community, which is available in English and French already.
Wonderful.
Yes, because there can be extensions of extensions, and then things get really cool.
Then it gets fun. Well, I know that we're coming close to the end of our time. If there are questions that people have been holding on to, this might be a good time to raise your hand. Oh, okay. Well, I think if that's it, then that's the end of our conversation for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, and to both of our speakers for telling us about these models and your conversations tonight. It's been great.
It has.
Thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Eleni, you have to stop the recording.
Bye.
Oh.